in war-torn Europe, homeless people are still restless and on the move. These are the innocent victims of war, the displaced persons. These were the farmers, the artisans, the students, and the laborers of the small states of Europe. Behind them are their homes, destroyed. What lies ahead of them? People without a country, people without a home, people awaiting a chance to live again, to build afresh their shattered lives in a new country. And in Britain there are others turning their eyes abroad. For them, Australia House London is the gateway to Australia, land of the future. Here, scores of thousands of men and women are seeking a wider future on British soil. Thousands of British men and women visit Australia House each week to learn more about our country. They ask questions, they listen to advice, they bring their children. Ample literature covering all aspects of Australian life is available. The need for more Australians is obvious. The old world speaks of the troubled Far East. For us, it is the very near north. Teeming millions are on our doorstep, while we Australians are so few. With our country as large as the United States, we have a total population only as big as that of New York. We need more people for defense and development. And today that population is coming to us. Today migrant ships are bringing new settlers to Australia. New lifeblood for our young country.
From the first day, those first Elizabethans arrived in Elizabeth South to receive their housing allocations, having been enticed into the new town following the Chifley Governments' Populate or Perish campaign launched in 1949, the town of Elizabeth grew rapidly, with the first homes in Elizabeth North being occupied on the 16th of June 1956, Elizabeth Grove on the 12th of January 1957, Elizabeth East on the 12th of July 1958, and Elizabeth Vale on the 8th of February 1960. Generally speaking, allocations were decided by the housing trust themselves and not the individual families, who were allocated housing according to the family's circumstances, including size and the type of skilled labour the breadwinner of the family, at that time meaning the husbands and fathers, were bringing into the new town. Beginning its life as a part of the council district of Salisbury, by the end of February 1960, just a little more than 4 years after Elizabeth's first 78 families moved into the area, Elizabeth's population was already 15,350. And she was now the biggest town in South Australia outside Adelaide. For the Elizabeth originals pouring into the new town between 1955 and 1960, life was a mixture of discomfort, inconvenience and isolation, along with hopeful anticipation, endless possibilities, and a pioneering spirit not seen in South Australia since its early settlement 100 years prior. While Elizabeth was not, as many believed, entirely a city of migrants, it did attract a higher proportion of newcomers than did older established areas. Migrants were pouring into every state after World War II, hoping for a fresh start, and South Australia in 1 year absorbed more than any other state. With just 9% of Australia's population, it took in 16% of the incoming settlers. The isolation of young families in the new town, before such facilities as hospitals and government offices arrived, was made even harder to bear by their separation from extended family and friends left behind on the other side of the world. Elizabeth was a town without aunts, uncles, cousins or grandparents, and as one Elizabeth original remembers it, because no one had family, To those Elizabeth originals, everyone became family. Because there were virtually no trees to begin with, they all had to be planted. The South Australian Housing Trust opened a nursery on the corner of Judd Road and Phillip Highway, from which all new householders were given 6 trees from the nursery stock. Stock from here was also used to plant the plantations and trees around the reserves in Elizabeth, with many cuttings being grown here from Sir Thomas Playford's own orchard in the Adelaide Hills. Still, these all took 4 to 5 years to grow. So summer was a time when the north wind blew unchecked across the northern plain, snatching dust from building sites and rough roads, and smearing the sky with dirt, which would then lay a gritty film on washing, furniture, and eyeballs. Winter brought days of mud and gluey potholes. When the plank platform at Elizabeth South and Womma stations were lined all day with walking shoes and gumboots awaiting their owner's return from work. There was a sense of pride and destiny too, in being part of a close-knit community embarking on a venture virtually unheard of in Australia's history in terms of scale and vision. There were no fences to begin with, so trails to shops and station led through back gardens. Some families kept a cup on their back garden tap for parched overlanders. One day the commuters followed their morning paths to the station as usual, only to find that evening the workmen had been busy all day erecting fences. Too late to search for unfamiliar routes along the footpaths, everyone took the short way home, over the fences. For the Elizabeth originals, the railway was the most important transport link, carrying workers to their jobs and secondary school children to their schools in Adelaide or Enfield, as well as bringing migrant families to inspect their new town. One early resident remembers droves of migrants coming each weekend just off the ship, dragging children with snow-white faces and carrying jackets and mats. Even this was difficult at first. In early 1956, one family asked at Adelaide Station for tickets to Elizabeth South. The clerk was taken aback, perhaps having never heard of Elizabeth South. After a long search, the clerk finally produced the tickets. The next obstacle came at the platform gate itself, where they were told the train did not stop at the new town. This was overcome by negotiations with the train crew, who agreed to stop and put them off at the heap of earth that was at that time Elizabeth South Station. The trains were not always on time, and such mishaps as cows or sheep on the line were common. For the more enterprising children of the area, the station itself was a source of income, who on hot days used to take water there and sell it for a penny a glass. When they weren't, that is, selling bunches of soursobs to the newcomers. Evidence of the farming activities so recently ended was everywhere. The owners of new gardens walking from their homes at Elizabeth Vale to Mr. King's nursery, once situated near Phillip Highway, would have to cross a field of oats. Lucerne persisted in gardens for a long time, and it was common to see people with sacks collecting it along the nature strips. Muddy and poorly maintained roads were a hazard for some time. Visitors to Elizabeth, or drivers simply passing through, had to negotiate Breakneck Creek on Main North Road, which was a narrow bridge which had existed for many years on a sharp bend near the present-day town centre. But many unsuspecting drivers failed to negotiate the bend and landed in the creek. In 1960, the bridge was demolished and the present-day alignment of Main North Road was formed. The stretch from Gawler Street in Salisbury through to what would become the site of General Motors Holden in Elizabeth South was called the Glue Pot. Judd Road was the only link between Elizabeth South and the Main North Road. Visitors in cars had to be escorted along the tracks to the known territory of the main road. If left to find their own way, they were liable to reappear on their host's doorstep after an hour or so. Long after most roads in the new town were sealed, Womma Road, being a government road not controlled by the Housing Trust, remained a strip of dirt, with residents complaining that they sank to their knees in mud during the winter.